Yo, what is up, guys? Welcome to another episode, GMAK, the Boiler Man. Back in the laboratory. I've been doing some stuff outside, doing stuff inside, trying to change it up a little bit. It's a rainy day today. Figured I'd come back inside to shoot this video. On today's topic, I wanted to discuss my opinion on the differences between steam systems and hydronic systems, which ones I believe are more efficient, which ones I believe are a little bit better, worse, whatever. Again, everything you see in these videos is my opinion. I call myself an expert. I'm sure there's people out there that maybe know more than I do, but I'm just giving it to you based on my experiences. If you're new to the channel, man, we appreciate you guys being here. Subscribe to the channel, man. I'm telling you, we bring a lot of great content, and I know that I try very, very hard to bring topics that are relatable and educational for you guys. And again, a lot of this is me opening up discussions for us to have. So drop a comment below as well. While you're at it, man, smash the like button. It really helps the algorithm. We're really trying to push these videos up, get some eyeballs on them, and grow the channel. Because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. So on this episode, like I said, I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about steam systems and hydronic systems. And everybody's going to have their opinion on this. And if I'm being honest, I'm an old school steam guy. I mean, most of the buildings that I deal with in New York City are steam. That doesn't mean there isn't hydronic systems. We definitely have them out there. But I work on far more majority of steam systems. So I've seen kind of the ins and outs of both. And I'm just going to get into discussing a little bit of what I think. Now, I want to start with hydronic systems and my opinion. And before I really get into any of this, I want you guys to understand too, like every system has its components and every system has its efficient way of operating. When everything is balanced out the way it's supposed to, both these systems are tremendous and they can really provide good heat. And they're both good systems in their own right. So I just want to say that before I really get into my thought process as far as both of them are concerned. Now, when it comes to hydronic systems, like I just said to you, one of the things I'm always looking at is, are we piped correctly? Are we putting the expansion tank and the fill for the system in the right places? A lot of these things come down to piping. Steam systems are really not that much different. It comes down to piping, size pipe, header piping, near boiler piping, all those things. A lot of what I see out there is the same thing you guys hear me talk about a lot. Unfortunately, we're in a type of profession where you really have to have knowledge. This is not for the run-of-the-mill person, but I also see a lot of times, unfortunately, people that come into the business that really don't know what the hell they're doing, and somehow they find their way into the boiler rooms, and we run into nothing but problems. So when it comes to piping the system in, one of the first things I do when I get to the job is look at that. I want to know, how am I piped? How's my... if you have multiple boilers, sometimes we have steel boilers that are on hydronic systems. That's a little bit different. The steel's a little bit thicker. It's more pressurized. But then on the other side, you have sometimes banks of boilers. So you can have a bunch of smaller boilers, tied together. And then I look at how it's piped also, right? Like, do we have even T's? Do we have even direction from where the boiler starts to where that bank of piping comes in, whether it be the supplies or the returns? Do I have low water cutoffs on them? Do I have flow controls going out to whatever, some of the buildings have their own bank. So they'll have a tree of supplies and a tree of returns. Some buildings have one common loop that goes off one big pump. So before I do anything, first thing I'm doing is going in there and I'm taking a look at how the job is piped, how the pump systems are set up. Are they pumping away? Are they pumping back into the boiler? There's so many little factors. But at the same time, my opinion is on a hot water boiler, on the hydronic system, you're going to be operating at lower temperatures, so you're using less BTUs to create sort of the same effect as opposed to like a steam system. So it can be very efficient. But it really does come down to piping, pipe size, because even like I've seen branches going out to the apartments, either they're too small, or if they're larger size, do I have the pump capacity to move the water around? So, without getting into really the mathematics and just giving you my opinion, I think hydronic systems are tremendous. Understanding the piping, understanding the layout, understanding the pipes, pump sizes, right? Understanding the pressures, right? Because that's another thing about hydronic systems. If I got a 5-story building, a 6-story building, like how are you coming up with how much pressure you need for the building? Because on a single family house, you may only need 12 pounds of pressure to get to that second floor. But on a 7-story, 6-story building, I'm going to need upwards of 25, 30 psi, and if not more, depending on how wide the building is. So there's a lot of factors. Again, I didn't want to come on here and talk to you about mathematics, really just giving you my opinion based on efficiencies. Is it an efficient system? It is an efficient system. They work really well. Like I said, you don't need the same amount of BTU content to get the same result. Yes, sometimes the boilers might run a little bit longer. It really just depends. You have the colder days, warmer days. Again, we're not going to get into semantics here. I'm just giving you my opinion on the systems themselves. So I do find it to be a very efficient system. I do find it to be a very good system. But again, everything comes down to piping. You're going to hear me say the same thing when I start talking to you about steam. But in reality, it's all the near boiler piping. And not only is it near boiler piping, it's what's happening throughout the building. How is it designed in the first place? That's the biggest problem I run into on these bigger buildings is it's not like you have, the plans of how they pipe the building out originally in front of you. The pipes go in the walls, they go in the ground. Like where does it loop? How many lines are there? How many zones are there? How is it set up? That could be the hardest thing to figure out because I've had those issues. But overall, though, from the perspective of how well the system works, I think it's a great system. But it's really just knowing these little intricacies that will make the system operate a little bit better, and that's kind of where we come in. When I see heating problems, when I have hydronic, it's always these things. Near boiler piping, pump size, direction of flow, how is it zoned out, how much pressure is in the system, how old is the expansion tank, is the expansion tank good, all those types of things. So now to switch over to steam, which we do predominantly just based on circumstance. It's not that we don't have knowledge. Obviously we do, but we do a lot of steam systems in our business. And I feel there's so much correlation between the two, only from the perspective of looking at near boiler piping, venting, right? Because that's another thing with hydronic also that I didn't really touch on, like what type of ventilation systems do you have on your radiators? What type of ventilation system do you have coming out of the boiler? What type of ventilation system do you have at the air scoop? What kind of air scoop are you using, right? So again, I didn't want to get into all the little details, but these are all things that are super important that are going to help operate your system a certain way. And when it comes to steam, it's really not much different, right? So when it comes to steam, you have header. How high is the header? How's your A dimension from where your water line is to where your header starts, right? Do you have a drip? Do you have the equalizer set up properly? Is your Hartford loop installed the right way, right? Is the Hartford loop at the right height to make sure that we're maintaining that water level inside the boiler? These are all things that we have to look at when we go into the job. Then there's main venting in the buildings. I'm being honest, New York City, I've worked in a lot of these buildings. Now we've retrofitted a lot of these buildings for main venting over the years, but there's still so many jobs you go to where it has little small Gordon air vent all the way at the end of an 8-inch main. So we're not venting that air out quick enough. So it becomes a very inefficient system. I have to rely on that one small air vent and then all the small air vents on the radiators to provide proper heat getting to those radiators in a timely fashion. And then you guys, steam guys that know, you really want to vent that air out as fast as possible. So I want to be putting in big time vents at the end of those mains and then figuring out, whether I have a riser that needs to be vented out or if I have a radiator itself that has to be vented out. Typically for me, I like to put big vents on the mains and I do smaller vents on the radiators. You don't want to rush that steam in to the radiator because that can cause other problems, but that's a video for another day. As far as the system is concerned, if everything is balanced, going back to what I was saying about balancing, right? Like this is where those correlations are made. If my venting is good, if my main venting is good, if my radiator vents are good, if my radiator valves are good, if everything's open and balanced and operating the way it's supposed to, my personal opinion has always been that steam is a great system. The heat tends to linger a little bit longer inside the radiators, so you can have the system off for a period of time, but you're still going to be radiating heat into the apartments. But even that I've seen recently where they're redoing apartments and they're taking those old school big cast iron radiators out, and they're putting in these smaller ones that they think are more efficient. But the truth is, your surface area is way smaller. So if you have, you know, a little bedroom, okay, it might work. But when you have a big living room, I've seen it. Oh, we don't have the same heat we had last year. I'm like, yeah, well, what did you do that's different? I'm like, it looks like you put a little radiator here. Well, we took the big radiator out. I said, yeah, well, what do you think? You know, you went from having a radiator that's, you know, 10 to 12 sections long, that it was huge surface area that was producing a lot of radiant for the room and the convection, and then putting this little radiator in here in its place. And then, of course, you're not going to heat this room up with this little thing. So again, there's a lot of little ins and outs, and I think I will do a video on steam systems and get into them a little bit deeper. And again, my opinion, because I think it's so important. There's so many little things that you guys can know that would help you troubleshoot certain problems, like at the radiators themselves and at the risers themselves and water coming out of the vents and things like that. But again, I digress, because that's not what the conversation is. Once again, I believe that steam systems are a great system. You do need extra BTU content. The flame really has to be proper in order to produce the fire in order to produce the steam that you need. In order to take the liquid in the boiler and convert it into a gas, because that's basically what you're doing. You're taking that water, you're turning it into steam. That takes an extra oomph of BTU. So if I don't have the BTU input that I need, I'm not going to be able to produce the temperatures that I need to create steam for the system. So again, these are just my opinions. Take it for what it's worth. Both great systems in their own right. Everything's got to be piped right. I think we can all agree to that. And at the end of the day, you choose what works for you. But it really comes down to how the boiler's piped and the billing's piped from day one. As long as the billing's piped properly, both systems work great. They both have pros and they both have cons, just like anything else. So again, once again, my opinion. If you want, drop a comment below. Let's have a discussion about it. Discussions always make things a lot easier and better for everybody. And we all are here for understanding and education. That's what it's all about. So I hope you guys have a great day. I hope you got something from this video. Again, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. Smash the like button. Give us some love. We appreciate you. Have a great day. Peace.